Before an Entra ID migration can succeed, you need to understand what exists today. Users, groups, devices, apps, dependencies, and risks all shape the path forward. Assessment turns that uncertainty into a practical migration strategy. You've already built the foundation: what Active Directory is, how authentication, DNS, and group policy keep it running, and why organizations modernize toward Entra ID. Now we change gears. Before designing the future state, we need an evidence-based view of the current environment. A current state assessment turns migration planning from guesswork into evidence. It shows what exists, which systems depend on it, and where hidden risk lies. That includes stale accounts, unused groups, unmanaged devices, legacy authentication, and applications tied to Active Directory in unexpected ways. These findings shape scope and sequencing. They show what to clean up first, who belongs in a pilot, and what readiness should mean. The result is a practical set of Entra ID requirements built from facts, not assumptions. A good assessment breaks a complex environment into work streams that can be investigated consistently. Identity comes first, because users, groups, privileged accounts, service accounts, and stale objects define much of the risk. Devices come next, including servers, workstations, shared endpoints, and anything unmanaged. Then review application dependencies, especially LDAP, Kerberos, NTLM, file shares, printing, and hard-coded authentication. Finally, connect the findings to readiness: cleanup tasks, business impact, pilot candidates, and blockers. This structure turns discovery into decisions, instead of producing a large inventory with no clear next step. Identity inventory is about making the directory understandable. You need to know which user accounts are active, disabled, expired, shared, or tied to contractors. Groups need the same scrutiny, because nested or unused groups can carry permissions forward in unexpected ways. Service accounts and privileged accounts should be treated as their own risk category. They often support critical processes and may have excessive access. Also check the identity data itself: naming standards, UPNs, email addresses, and required attributes. A good inventory turns Active Directory from a black box into a decision list: migrate, fix, consolidate, or retire. Directory cleanup should be driven by evidence, not assumptions. Use last logon, password age, expiration, and HR status to identify accounts that may be stale. Then validate with managers, application owners, or records teams before taking action. Disabled does not always mean disposable. Some accounts support audit history, mailbox retention, legal hold, or service ownership. Once validated, classify each object clearly: migrate, exclude from sync, archive, disable, or delete. Document the owner, business reason, decision, and timing, so clutter and risk are not synchronized into the cloud. Groups are more than containers. They often become the real access model for applications, files, mail, and delegated administration. Separate security, distribution, mail-enabled, dynamic, and nested groups, because each behaves differently during migration. Then validate ownership, membership, purpose, and access scope. The biggest risks are stale members, missing owners, and nesting chains so deep that no one can explain who gets access. Circular nesting is especially dangerous. Clean naming standards and review dates now make future Entra ID governance much easier to automate. Service and privileged accounts are often the most sensitive part of the assessment. A normal user account maps to a person. A service account maps to a workload, such as an app pool, SQL service, scheduled task, script, or backup job. A privileged account maps to authority, such as domain admins, server operators, or delegated OU admins. Assess these as separate populations. For each account, capture business criticality, permission level, password policy, and whether interactive logon is allowed. Then decide the modernization path: managed identities, group managed service accounts, least privilege, and stronger privileged access controls. Device inventory turns AD dependency into practical migration decisions. Discover every domain-joined workstation, laptop, shared PC, kiosk, specialized device, and server. Then enrich each record with operating system, last check-in, owner, department, location, and lifecycle status. The key step is dependency mapping: group policy, domain logon, map drives, certificates, and local admin practices. User endpoints and infrastructure servers should be assessed separately because they migrate and get managed differently. The result is a clear readiness view: green for ready, amber for review, and red for blockers. An AD transition is not just about users and computers. Daily work may depend on file shares, mapped drives, DFS paths, NTFS groups, print queues, drivers, and group policy printer mapping. Network services matter too. DNS, DHCP, certificates, radius, NPS, VPN authentication, and name resolution can all have hidden AD ties. For each dependency, ask what would break if AD changed tomorrow. Then choose a path. Migrate it as is, modernize it to a cloud or managed service, retain it temporarily with controls, or retire it because the business no longer needs it. Application discovery is where migration plans often meet reality. A system may look simple, but still bind to LDAP, request Kerberos tickets, fall back to NTLM, or query a domain controller directly. For a legacy HR app, look for hard-coded domain names, service account passwords, LDAP paths, group DNs, and server references. Then validate with the application owner. Who uses it, how sign-in works, how critical it is, and what support limits exist. The outcome is a decision. Move as cloud-ready, keep hybrid, modernize authentication, or retire it. Authentication discovery makes migration planning very practical. An application using SAML or OAuth may be ready for Entra ID with limited change. One relying on NTLM, unsigned LDAP binds, basic authentication, or embedded service account passwords needs remediation first. Validate this through domain controller logs, firewall flows, configuration files, and service account activity, not assumptions. The goal is to separate dependencies that can move directly to modern authentication from those that need hybrid support, redesign, or credential cleanup before they become migration blockers. Risk classification turns inventory into an actionable migration plan. Each object, device, and application is scored for business impact, technical complexity, security exposure, dependency depth, and remediation effort. That scoring separates items that are ready from those needing cleanup, remediation, hybrid handling, or deferral. The real value is early blocker detection. Unsupported operating systems, unknown owners, privileged account sprawl, or critical LDAP dependencies. Capture each risk in a register with an owner, mitigation plan, timeline, and decision status. That turns uncertainty into managed work. A strong pilot is not just a small rollout. It is a controlled test of real work. Choose users who represent common workflows, devices, locations, and access needs, but avoid the most fragile teams first. Map every dependency: apps, groups, file shares, printers, VPN, and sign-in methods. Remediate known gaps before launch. Run the pilot with close support, and measure outcomes objectively. Look for successful sign-ins, application access, compliant devices, low ticket volume, acceptable performance, and user satisfaction. Those lessons become the migration playbook for the wider rollout. A successful migration starts with evidence. Inventory identities, groups, privileges, devices, servers, and apps. Uncover dependencies like LDAP, Kerberos, NTLM file, print, and hard-coded authentication. Then use risk and readiness to clean up, choose pilots, and prevent failures. Next, we shift to Microsoft Entra ID concepts and the cloud identity model.